Sometimes we hear fake it till you make it, and there's parts of that can be useful in a process, but I just got off a long call with a good longtime friend. He's more production, business, marketing side in the business of games. I'm, of course, coming more from the teaching, game development, technical game design side of things, but we both recognize there's this overlap of people who are failing and floundering at what they're trying to do, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to make sure that's not happening to you. What it comes down to is something like, you're familiar with the term poser, which used to be said a lot more in the 90s than anymore, but obviously it was referring to, right, as someone who dresses a certain way, talks and acts a certain way, as if they are someone who does something, historically skateboarding or something else of, edgy nature, who don't really do that thing. They don't actually skateboard, or they're not really good at it. They don't put the time and practice into doing it. And I want to actually go further than that, though, because again, that just seems like, well, it's annoying to certain people, but there's this behavior, and I want to emphasize this is not an accusation of what people actually believe or how the world works. The history around these things is much more complicated and culturally nuanced, but there's this concept that I find useful in thinking about these things of the cargo cult. And the way that the cargo cult's often explained, again, hyper-simplified. There's a rich history about this if you want to go read about it. But the idea being that there used to be cases where industrialized nations during times of war would fly in equipment, metal, knives, tools, armor, things and devices of use to local cultures, who then would trade for those or acquire those or find them beneficial. Many years later, after the war ended, and I say the war, I think World War II is when many of these stories kind of go, but there's earlier and more recent, later examples people, again, kind of hand wave as being sort of like cargo cults. What happens is the militaries would leave those areas, and then the local people, trying to figure out, okay, well, why did those things come to us? Because we want more of them, would replicate the pattern of, in the most visible example, an airport. They'd put together or they'd dig out for a runway, right? They'd put together where they're kind of a big stack of things where there should be a radar tower or something. And without any real sense of the greater logistical interrelation of these parts and how a runway works and why it's built the way it does, and certainly not how a radar tower works and why it's built the way that it does, thinking that if they just mimic the structure of it, well, then they will achieve the desired result. And the reason why this is a helpful conceptual story, even if, again, the reality is far more nuanced and complicated. Go look up cargo cults. A lot of good Wikipedia articles you'll read. It'll lead you down the rabbit trail. Interesting history. But the reason why it's important is that lots of people out there, what happens is, in their attempt to fake it as they make it, they're emulating the surface level behavior. And we see this all the time with people who, they are trying to be game developers. They're trying to act like how they see game developers do. They're not doing the actual, what game developers are doing. The other 95% of the time, it's producing a game. They're talking like one. They're posting like one. They're acting like one. They're going around the scenes of them. They're going to meetups of them. They aren't actually doing the thing. It'd be a bit like if you tried to copy what a basketball player does without understanding that they also have practices and they spend time in the gym, and that so many other parts of their life revolve around supporting this activity, which is the little bit you see on the sliver on the end. And if all you ever see and go off of is the little bit of them that shows up on Twitter, the little bit of them that shows up in public, and you're not actually learning the practices, the skills, the doing of those things, no amount of faking it will lead you to making it, right? It's a cargo cult problem. It's being a poser. And the difficult thing is that you may not even recognize what's going on because all you know how to clone is what you see, without any sort of behind-the-scenes visibility into what's actually happening. It's like when you're a little kid and you make a robot out of cardboard, right? You kind of tape together some tubes and you tape together some boxes and you draw a smiley face on like an old Calvin and Hobbes or whatever. And you're like, okay, well, now I just need to make it work. That's the only remaining step here. Make my cardboard robot work. There's a lot of folks who think they have ideas for game development stuff, and they're kind of making a cardboard robot. And at no point have they actually, where the metal touches, I guess not the tire sets a row, but the metal touches the wire, whatever, for actual mechanics and automation and building of things is a very different craft. Very, very, very different craft. And so, for example, one thing I'm careful about in my videos, and this guy had a conversation about his challenge in the marketing world or so on, he recognized how little on my videos is gameplay stuff. Right, or even how many of my weekly email series at gamedevtraining.com. It's like weekly tips about stuff. How little of it is on-screen gameplay things. Because what a surface tip of the iceberg that is of what's going on. As compared to the psychology of it, the technique of it, the processes of it, the things people get stuck on. Anymore, if in terms of finding an answer to a programming question, those answers are easy to find on Google, they're easy to find from a YouTube video, they're out there. Where we get stuck on is applying it, doing something with it, structuring. It's why I've got my new video course. And to give it a second plug, CompleteEveryProject.com. Recently passed 200 users. Proud of that, which within the time frame it's been up there on Udemy, gave it a bestseller tag. Double proud of that. But it's about the process of completing their side projects, because when people don't see that this is how things happen, all they see is a game that comes out. All they see is someone trash posting broken game bug GIFs on Twitter or complaining about how much they overwork themselves. They emulate the overwork. They emulate the posting bugs. They emulate what they see. And they don't see what's happening behind the scenes is this kind of adaptive planning process that I've trained people in, that they've released literally hundreds of games from team long-term remote projects on, that it's the stuff you're actually doing. It's that practice. And again, I'm saying this not to make anyone feel bad, but to help you catch in yourself, to recognize that, again, this fake it if you make it is sort of an attitude thing more than anything else. What it can't be is just cloning the surface level of what I see and assuming that, to extend from that little sports example, right, if the only thing I think a musician's doing is they show up on the stage and then they just sing or they play, I'm missing the countless hours that go into rehearsal and practices and coaching and training and this whole other slog that there's no shortcut through that but doing it. And doing it doesn't always look the same as what you see as the final result. And to be careful about that, to be aware of that. Because once you know what to look for, you can find it. If you don't realize that there's something to find that's different than what you found already, you might think you're doing it. You might have fooled yourself. You might have cargo cult poser tricked yourself into thinking that you're doing it. And I'm ringing this bell today to warn you, are you sure? Are you actually building things? What was the last game you've released? How many games have you released? How many projects have you finished? And if you haven't, figure out what you're missing, but it's not just going to be cloning at a surface level effect. What other people who are doing it are putting out there and how they're acting. It's not just a way to dress. It's not just a way to talk. It's not just a thing to do on Twitter. It's building stuff. It's releasing things. It's finishing things. Anyway, that's it for the day. Catch you all another time. Thanks for being here as always. Catch you next time. Bye for now.